Welcome to HOA Citation Circus. The board picked the wrong week to play games. You are about to get another letter. That is what Jennifer Davis shouted at me across my back property line while I stood there holding a roll of caution tape and staring at the survey stakes I had paid a licensed surveyor to install 2 days earlier. She was wearing a pink windbreaker with the hood up and a white visor, even though it was drizzling, and she had a reflective safety vest thrown over the windbreaker like she was directing traffic at a construction site. She also had a tiny body camera clipped to the vest, the red light blinking steadily. I am a firefighter on rotating shifts in Bend, Oregon, and I had just finished a 48-hour rotation. I was exhausted, soaked, and holding a roll of caution tape looped over one wrist because I had been marking the trench line for my new fence. Jennifer is the safety committee chair for the Pinecrest Village Community Association, and she had decided my fence project was her personal crusade. She pointed at the orange survey stakes and said the HOA did not recognize them. She said she would remove them herself if I did not take them down by the end of the day. I asked her what authority she had to remove survey stakes placed by a licensed professional. She said the HOA covenants required board approval for any fence and I had not submitted a formal application. I told her I had submitted the application 3 weeks ago and received written approval. She said the approval was conditional and I had violated the conditions by starting work without a pre-construction meeting. I asked her to show me where the covenants required a pre-construction meeting. She said if I made her repeat herself it would get more expensive. I swallowed my anger, because I knew the moment to use it was coming. I pulled out my phone and took a photo of her standing next to the stakes. She asked what I was doing. I said I was documenting the conversation. She said I did not have her consent to record her. I pointed at her body camera and said she was recording me. She said that was different because she was acting in an official HOA capacity. I said I was acting in the capacity of a property owner protecting my legal rights. She said I was being hostile and she would add that to her report. The stakes were not coming out. I had paid $1,200 for a boundary survey after the HOA claimed my previous fence plan encroached on the common area by 6 inches. The surveyor had confirmed that my property line was exactly where I thought it was and that the HOA's map was outdated. The new fence would sit 2 feet inside my property line, well clear of any easement. Jennifer did not care. She said the survey was not valid because it had not been reviewed by the HOA's engineer. I asked who the HOA's engineer was. She said that was confidential. I asked how I was supposed to get the survey reviewed if she would not tell me who to send it to. She said that was my problem. A teenager on a bike braked hard at the edge of my driveway and stopped to watch the argument. Jennifer turned and told him to move along. He did not move. She raised her voice and said this was private property and he was trespassing. I said he was on the public sidewalk. She said the HOA maintained the sidewalk and she had the authority to enforce trespassing rules. The kid looked at me. I shrugged. He stayed. Jennifer turned back to me and said I was encouraging disrespect for community standards. I had moved to Pinecrest Village 2 years earlier because the neighborhood was quiet and close to the fire station. The HOA was supposed to be hands-off, mostly concerned with snow removal and landscaping contracts. That changed 6 months ago when Jennifer was elected to the board and appointed herself safety committee chair. Since then, she had sent violation notices to half the neighborhood for things like trash cans visible from the street, holiday lights up past January 10th, and unapproved door colors. My first notice came in March when I replaced my garage door opener and left the old unit on the curb for bulk trash pickup. Jennifer sent a certified letter saying the item was an eyesore and I had 24 hours to remove it or face a $50 fine. I moved it to the garage. 2 weeks later, I got another notice saying my lawn had weeds exceeding 4 inches in height. I had just mowed. I sent photos. Jennifer replied that the photos did not prove the date and I needed to provide time-stamped documentation. I ignored her. She fined me $50. I paid it to avoid escalation. Then I made the mistake of stacking cedar boards next to my garage while I waited for the fence permit. Jennifer walked past my house on one of her evening patrols, saw the lumber and took a photo. The next day, I received an email blast to the entire neighborhood with the subject line, "Violation of Material Storage Standards." The email included a photo of my garage with the boards visible, and a paragraph explaining that unapproved material storage was a safety hazard and a visual blight. My address was listed. My name was listed. The email said the board would discuss enforcement action at the next meeting. I was furious. I replied to the entire list and attached my approved fence application and the receipt for the lumber. Jennifer replied and said the approval was conditional and I had failed to comply with Section 12.4 of the covenants, which required all construction materials to be stored out of public view. I pulled up the covenants. Section 12.4 was about trash enclosures. It said nothing about lumber. I called the management company and asked to speak to someone about Jennifer's email. The receptionist transferred me to a compliance coordinator named Mark. I explained the situation. Mark said he would look into it and get back to me. He never did. A week later, I got a formal notice from the HOA saying I had violated the material storage clause and owed a $250 administrative processing fee. The notice said the fee was in addition to any fines and was non-refundable. I read the covenants again. There was no mention of administrative processing fees. I emailed Mark and asked for the legal basis. He replied that the fees were outlined in the board-adopted fee schedule and I could request a copy for $25. I requested the copy. It arrived 2 weeks later. The fee schedule was dated 6 months earlier and had never been distributed to homeowners. Jennifer had authored it. My mental health had been fragile since a bad call 6 months earlier, where we lost a kid in a house fire. The harassment from the HOA was pushing me to the edge. I started waking up at 3 in the morning thinking about violation notices. I stopped checking my mail for days at a time because I did not want to see another envelope from the management company. My captain noticed I was distracted at work and pulled me aside. I told him what was happening. He said I needed to fight it, or it would eat me alive. He was right. I hired a contractor to start the fence. His name was Ed, and he had built half the fences in Pinecrest Village. He showed up on a Tuesday morning with his crew and started digging post holes. Jennifer appeared 15 minutes later. She walked straight up to Ed and demanded to see his business license and proof of insurance. Ed handed her a binder with copies of everything. She flipped through it and said the insurance policy did not list the HOA as an additional insured. Ed said that was not required for private property work. She said it was required under HOA rules and he needed to stop work immediately. Ed looked at me. I told him to keep going. Jennifer said she would call the police. I said she should go ahead. She did not call the police. She called the management company and demanded an emergency board meeting. The meeting was scheduled for that evening. I received an email at 4 in the afternoon saying I was required to attend, and that failure to appear would result in a fine of $500 and immediate legal action. The email said the HOA had given me a cure deadline that expired tonight, and they would threaten daily fines starting tomorrow if the fence work did not stop. I showed up at the meeting with a folder full of documents: the approved fence application, the survey, the covenants, the fee schedule, and a printed copy of every email Jennifer had sent me. The meeting was held in the community clubhouse, a small building near the entrance with a kitchenette and a conference table. Jennifer sat at the head of the table with 2 other board members, a retired accountant named Paul and a yoga instructor named Linda. Paul looked uncomfortable. Linda looked bored. Jennifer had her body camera on. I pointed at it and asked if the meeting was being recorded. She said yes. I asked if I could record as well. She said no. I asked why. She said board policy prohibited homeowners from recording meetings. I pulled out my phone and started recording anyway. She said I was in violation of meeting rules and she would have me removed. I asked who would remove me. She did not answer. Jennifer opened the meeting by summarizing the violation. She said I had started unpermitted construction work, failed to submit required documentation, ignored multiple warnings, and created a safety hazard by storing materials in public view. She said the board had no choice but to issue a stop work order and impose immediate fines. She said the fines would start at $100 per day and increase by $50 per day until the work stopped. She said I would also be responsible for any legal fees the HOA incurred in enforcing the order. I waited until she finished. Then I opened my folder and pulled out the approved fence application. I slid it across the table. I said the application had been approved in writing 3 weeks earlier and included a signed letter from the board president. Jennifer picked up the letter and glanced at it. She said the approval was conditional on compliance with all HOA rules and I had failed to comply. I asked which rule I had violated. She said Section 12.4. I pulled out the covenants and read Section 12.4 aloud. It was about trash enclosures. Jennifer said I was reading the wrong section. I asked her to show me the correct section. She said it was her job to interpret the covenants, not mine. Paul, the accountant, cleared his throat and said he wanted to see the section Jennifer was referencing. Jennifer said it was not necessary. Paul said he wanted to see it anyway. Jennifer said she would provide it later. Paul said he wanted to see it now. Jennifer stood up and said the meeting was over. Paul said the meeting was not over until he called for a vote. Jennifer said she was the chair and she decided when the meeting was over. Linda, the yoga instructor, said she agreed with Paul and wanted to see the section. Jennifer sat down and said fine. She pulled out her own copy of the covenants and flipped through it. She pointed to a section and slid the book across the table. Paul read it and frowned. He said the section was about fence height restrictions and had nothing to do with material storage. Jennifer said the two issues were related. Paul said he did not see how. Jennifer said it was a matter of interpretation. Paul said it sounded like Jennifer was making up rules. Jennifer said if he questioned her authority, he could resign from the board. Paul said he was not questioning her authority, he was questioning her reading comprehension. The meeting went sideways fast. Linda said she had not been told about any stop work order and she wanted to know why Jennifer had scheduled an emergency meeting without consulting the other board members. Jennifer said it was within her authority as safety committee chair. Linda said the safety committee was advisory only and did not have enforcement power. Jennifer said Linda was wrong. Linda said she had a copy of the bylaws and Jennifer was wrong. Jennifer said the bylaws had been updated. Linda asked to see the updated bylaws. Jennifer said they were not finalized yet. I sat there watching them argue and realized Jennifer had been running the HOA like her personal fiefdom for months. She had been issuing violations, imposing fees, and threatening homeowners without board approval. Paul and Linda had not been paying attention because they trusted her to handle the details. Now they were realizing she had been lying. Paul asked me if I had any other documentation. I pulled out the survey and the receipt showing I had paid for it. I also pulled out a printed email thread showing I had asked the management company for the name of the HOA's engineer and had never received a response. Paul read everything and said it looked like I had done everything right. He said he did not see any basis for a violation. Linda agreed. Jennifer said they were both wrong and if they voted against the stop work order, she would file a complaint with the state HOA oversight board. Paul said there was no such thing as a state HOA oversight board. Jennifer said there was. Paul said he was an accountant and he knew there was not. Jennifer said he was not a lawyer and he did not understand the law. The meeting ended with no vote. Paul said he wanted to consult the HOA attorney before taking any action. Jennifer said that was unacceptable. Paul said it was happening anyway. Jennifer walked out. Linda stayed behind and apologized to me. She said she had no idea Jennifer had been operating this way. She said she would make sure the stop work order did not go through. I thanked her and left. The next morning, I got a certified letter from Jennifer. It was not on HOA letterhead. It was on her personal stationery. The letter said I was in breach of the covenants and she was personally filing a complaint with the County Code Enforcement Office. She said my fence violated setback requirements and she had photographic evidence. She said she would also be filing a small claims suit to recover the costs of her time spent investigating my violations. The letter said I had 72 hours to respond or she would proceed with legal action. If you are enjoying this story, hit the like button and subscribe for more wild HOA drama. I called the County Code Enforcement Office and asked if anyone had filed a complaint about my property. The clerk said yes, a complaint had been filed the day before. I asked what the complaint alleged. She said it alleged my fence was too close to the property line and violated setback requirements. I asked if I could see the complaint. She said I could request a copy and it would be ready in 3 business days. I requested the copy. Then I called my surveyor and asked him to send a letter to the county certifying that my fence was within the legal setback. He said he would send it that afternoon. I also called a friend who worked as a paralegal and asked for advice. She said Jennifer's personal lawsuit threat was a bluff. She said small claims cases required documented damages and Jennifer had no damages. She also said filing a false code complaint could be considered harassment and I could file a counter complaint if I wanted to escalate. I asked if I should. She said it depended on how much fight I had in me. I said I had plenty. Ed, the contractor, called me that afternoon and said Jennifer had shown up at his office and demanded he stop work on my fence. He said she had threatened to report him to the state licensing board if he did not comply. Ed said he told her to leave. She said she would make sure he never worked in Pinecrest Village again. Ed laughed and said half the board members had his number on speed dial and Jennifer could try her luck. He said he was finishing my fence whether she liked it or not. The fence went up over the next 3 days. It was a simple 6-foot cedar privacy fence with posts set in concrete and rails secured with galvanized screws. It looked great. Every post was plumb. Every board was level. The gates swung smooth and latched tight. Jennifer walked past twice a day and took photos. She did not say anything to me, but I could see her jaw clenched every time. On the 4th day, I got another certified letter. This one was from the HOA attorney, a guy named Richard who worked for a firm in Portland. The letter said the HOA was formally notifying me that my fence violated multiple covenants, and I was required to remove it within 30 days or face a lien on my property. The letter cited 3 sections: 8.2, 9.5 unapproved structure, and 12.4 paterance. I read all 3 sections. None of them applied. Section 8.2 said fences could not exceed 6 feet. Mine was exactly 6 feet. Section 9.5 said structures required board approval. I had board approval in writing. Section 12.4 was still about trash enclosures. I called Richard and left a message. He called back 2 hours later. I explained the situation and read him the relevant sections of the covenants. He said he had not reviewed the covenants in detail and had relied on the board's representation that I was in violation. I asked if he was planning to file a lien without doing his own research. He said no, he would review the covenants and get back to me. He called back the next day and said the HOA's position was incorrect and he would not be proceeding with the lien. He also said he had advised the board to drop the matter. I asked if he had told Jennifer. He said he had sent a letter to the entire board. I asked if I could get a copy. He said he could not share board correspondence. I said that was fine. Jennifer did not drop it. She sent another email blast to the neighborhood with the subject line, "Reckless construction endangers community." The email said my fence was built without proper inspections and posed a safety risk. It said the board was exploring all legal options and urged residents to report any similar violations. It included another photo of my house with my address listed. I replied to the entire list and attached Richard's letter saying the HOA's position was incorrect. Jennifer replied and said Richard was not authorized to speak for the HOA and his letter was not binding. Paul replied and said Richard was absolutely authorized to speak for the HOA and Jennifer was out of line. Linda replied and said she agreed with Paul. Jennifer replied and said she would be calling a special meeting to address their insubordination. The special meeting never happened because Paul and Linda called their own meeting first. They scheduled it for the following week and invited all homeowners. Jennifer tried to cancel it, but the bylaws said any 2 board members could call a meeting with 7 days' notice. Jennifer showed up at the meeting with her body camera on and a stack of papers. She sat at the head of the table and refused to move when Paul asked her to sit with the other board members. Paul said fine and opened the meeting from the side of the table. Paul started by summarizing the situation. He said Jennifer had been issuing violations and fees without board approval. He said she had misrepresented the covenants and had cost the HOA thousands of dollars in unnecessary legal fees. He said the board had a fiduciary duty to the homeowners and Jennifer had violated that duty. He moved to remove her from the safety committee chair position. Linda seconded. Jennifer said the motion was out of order. Paul said it was not. Jennifer said she would not recognize the vote. Paul said the vote was happening anyway. The room was packed. 30 homeowners showed up, and most of them had their own stories about Jennifer. One guy said she had fined him for parking his work truck in his driveway. Another woman said Jennifer had reported her dog to animal control for barking during the day. A retired couple said Jennifer had threatened to foreclose on their property over a $50 fine they did not even know about. The stories went on for an hour. Jennifer sat there with her arms crossed and her jaw clenched. Her body camera kept recording. Paul called the vote. 30 hands went up in favor of removing Jennifer from the safety committee. 2 hands went up against, Jennifer's and 1 other. Paul said the motion passed. Jennifer said the vote was invalid because it had not been properly noticed. Paul read the bylaws aloud and showed that the notice had been properly posted. Jennifer said she would challenge the vote in court. Paul said she could try. Then Paul moved to rescind all violations and fees Jennifer had issued without board approval. Linda seconded. The vote was unanimous except for Jennifer. Paul said the motion passed and all affected homeowners would receive written notification within 10 days. Jennifer stood up and walked out. Her body camera was still recording. The room erupted in applause. I thought it was over. It was not over. Jennifer filed a small claims suit the next week. The filing alleged that I had defamed her in the neighborhood email thread and caused her emotional distress. She demanded $5,000 in damages. I received the summons by certified mail. The court date was set for 6 weeks out. I called my paralegal friend again. She read the complaint and laughed. She said it was the weakest defamation claim she had ever seen. She said truth was an absolute defense and everything I had said in the emails was true. She also said Jennifer had created a public record by sending the email blast to the entire neighborhood, so I could argue everything was already public. She said I should file a motion to dismiss and the judge would probably grant it. I filed the motion. The judge scheduled a hearing for 2 weeks later. The hearing was held at the county courthouse on a Thursday morning. I showed up with a folder full of emails, letters, and meeting minutes. Jennifer showed up with her body camera and a 3-ring binder. The judge was a woman in her 50s who looked like she had heard 1,000 small claims cases and had no patience for nonsense. She asked Jennifer to summarize her claim. Jennifer said I had publicly attacked her character and caused her emotional distress by questioning her authority. The judge asked for examples. Jennifer read from the emails. The judge stopped her halfway through and asked if I had made any false statements. Jennifer said the statements were misleading. The judge asked if they were false. Jennifer said they were misleading. The judge said that was not defamation. The judge asked me if I had anything to say. I said yes. I pulled out the email thread and highlighted the parts where Jennifer had called me reckless, dangerous, and a threat to the community. I said those were false statements, and if anyone had a defamation claim, it was me. The judge read the emails and nodded. She asked Jennifer if she had any evidence that I was reckless or dangerous. Jennifer said my fence was built without proper oversight. The judge asked if the fence violated any code. Jennifer said the HOA believed it did. The judge asked if the county believed it did. Jennifer said the county had not completed its investigation. The judge asked for a copy of the county complaint. Jennifer said she did not have it with her. The judge asked me if I had a copy. I pulled out the county's response letter, which said the complaint had been closed with no violation found. The judge read it and looked at Jennifer. She asked if Jennifer had any other evidence. Jennifer said she had photos. The judge asked to see them. Jennifer opened her binder and pulled out a stack of printed photos showing my fence from every angle. The judge looked at the photos and asked what was wrong with the fence. Jennifer said it was not aligned with the property line. The judge asked if Jennifer was a surveyor. Jennifer said no. The judge asked if Jennifer had hired a surveyor. Jennifer said no. The judge asked how Jennifer knew the fence was not aligned. Jennifer said it was obvious. The judge closed the binder and said the case was dismissed. She said Jennifer's claim had no merit and I was free to go. Jennifer said she wanted to appeal. The judge said she could file an appeal if she wanted to waste more time and money. Jennifer said the system was rigged. The judge said the hearing was over. I walked out of the courthouse feeling lighter than I had in months. Jennifer stayed behind arguing with the clerk about filing deadlines. I never saw her body camera footage, but I heard later that she had posted clips on a neighborhood Facebook group claiming the judge had been biased. The posts were deleted by the group admin within an hour. 2 weeks later, I got a letter from the management company. It was signed by Mark, the compliance coordinator. The letter said the company had completed an internal review of Jennifer's actions and found multiple policy violations. It said Jennifer had issued violations without board authorization, imposed fees that were not in the approved schedule, and misrepresented the covenants to homeowners. The letter said the company had terminated its relationship with Jennifer and she was no longer authorized to act on behalf of the HOA. The letter also said the management company was disciplining the rep who enabled it by failing to verify her authority before processing the violations. The same week, Paul called another board meeting. This one was to vote on a formal reprimand for Jennifer. The meeting was smaller, just the board members and a few interested homeowners. Paul presented a motion to remove Jennifer from the board entirely for violating her fiduciary duty. Linda seconded. Jennifer tried to speak, but Paul said she had already used her allotted time at the previous meeting. The vote was 2-1. Jennifer was out. The board also voted to issue me a fine waiver in writing with a firm no-contact directive. The waiver said all fines and fees imposed by Jennifer were rescinded and I owed nothing. The directive said Jennifer was prohibited from contacting me directly or indirectly about any HOA matter. If she violated the directive, the board would pursue legal action against her personally. I signed the waiver and filed it with my other documents. Jennifer tried one more move. She filed a formal complaint with the county inspector's office, claiming my fence blocked a utility easement. The inspector came out the next week and measured everything. He said the fence was 3 feet clear of the easement and there was no violation. He also said someone had filed multiple complaints about the same property in the past month, and the complaints were all unfounded. He said if it happened again, the county would investigate the person filing the complaints for harassment. I asked if he would put that in writing. He said he already had. He handed me a copy of his report with a note at the bottom. No violations found. Repeated complaints appear retaliatory. Recommend no further action without new evidence. Then came the moment I had been holding back. I had known for weeks that Jennifer had been using her admin access to the neighborhood gate system to log my comings and goings. I had noticed the pattern when I started getting violation notices within hours of arriving home from shifts. I filed a records request with the management company and asked for all access logs tied to my address. The company initially refused, saying the logs were confidential. I threatened to file a complaint with the State Attorney General's office for improper data collection. The company sent the logs 3 days later. The logs showed that Jennifer had accessed my gate records over 40 times in 2 months. She had also flagged my vehicle for security monitoring, which meant the gate camera took a photo every time I entered or exited. The logs were time-stamped and tied to her admin account. I also found notes she had added to my account. Potential covenant violation. Construction materials visible. Unapproved contractor on site. Every note was dated and included her user ID. I compiled the logs into a single document and sent it to Paul and Linda with a cover letter explaining what I had found. I also sent a copy to the management company and demanded an internal audit. The company responded within 48 hours and said they were launching a full investigation. They said Jennifer's admin access had been revoked, and they were reviewing all homeowner accounts for similar activity. The audit took 2 weeks. The results were sent to the entire board and all homeowners. The report found that Jennifer had abused her access to target multiple residents, not just me. She had flagged 12 homeowners for monitoring, all of whom had questioned her authority or filed complaints. She had also used the gate camera system to document alleged violations without notifying the homeowners or obtaining board approval. The report concluded that Jennifer's actions violated state privacy laws and the management company's own policies. The company issued a formal apology and offered free credit monitoring to all affected homeowners. Paul called one final meeting. It was held at the sheriff's substation lobby because the clubhouse was being renovated. A deputy sat at the front desk watching the whole thing. Jennifer showed up, but she did not sit at the table. She stood near the door with her arms crossed. Her body camera was off. Paul read the audit report aloud and moved to refer Jennifer's conduct to the HOA attorney for possible legal action. Linda seconded. The vote was unanimous. Jennifer walked out before Paul finished speaking. The attorney sent a letter to Jennifer the following week. I never saw the full text, but Paul told me it outlined potential civil claims for harassment, privacy violations, and abuse of fiduciary duty. The letter also demanded that Jennifer return all HOA documents, keys, and access credentials within 10 days. Jennifer complied. She also resigned from the Facebook group, stopped attending meetings, and stopped patrolling the neighborhood. Then came the funny karma moment. Paul scheduled a special board meeting to review the updated fee schedule Jennifer had created. He invited me to attend because I had been the first one to question it. The meeting was held on a Saturday morning and about 20 homeowners showed up. Paul asked if anyone had a copy of the fee schedule. I raised my hand and said I had requested one 6 months earlier and paid $25 for it. Paul asked if I still had it. I pulled out the printed copy and handed it to him. He read through it and started laughing. He said half the fees were made up and the other half were copied from another HOA in a different state. He said the schedule had never been properly adopted because Jennifer had skipped the required homeowner vote. Linda moved to void the entire fee schedule. The vote was unanimous except for one abstention. Paul asked who abstained. It was a guy in the back row who said he did not understand the issue. Paul explained it again. The guy said, "Oh, okay," and changed his vote to yes. The room laughed. Paul also announced that the board had received multiple complaints about Jennifer's enforcement tactics and had decided to adopt a formal policy requiring board approval for all violations and fines. The policy included a homeowner appeal process and a requirement that all notices cite the specific covenant section being violated. Linda moved to adopt the policy. The vote was unanimous. Paul said the policy would go into effect immediately, and all prior violations issued without board approval were void. He asked if anyone had questions. One guy asked if that meant his $50 fine for parking his truck was void. Paul said yes. The guy asked if he would get a refund. Paul said yes. The room erupted in applause. I left the meeting feeling like I had won. The fence was up. The fines were gone. Jennifer was out. The management company had cleaned house. The board had adopted real policies. The neighborhood was calm again. 3 months later, Paul called me and said he had something to show me. He said Jennifer had tried to file one more complaint, this time with the State Real Estate Commission, claiming the HOA had violated her rights by removing her from the board. The commission had reviewed the complaint and dismissed it. The dismissal letter said the complaint was frivolous and warned Jennifer that further filings without merit could result in sanctions. Paul said he wanted me to have a copy for my records. I thanked him and filed it with everything else. The HOA attorney also sent me a final letter. It said the board had voted to issue me a fine waiver in writing with a firm no-contact directive, exactly as promised. The waiver covered all fines, fees, and penalties Jennifer had imposed. The directive prohibited Jennifer from contacting me about any HOA matter, attending meetings where I was present, or filing complaints about my property. The letter said the board took my concerns seriously and appreciated my patience during the process. It was signed by Paul, Linda, and the attorney. I framed the letter and hung it in my garage next to the fence permit. Every time I look at it, I remember the moment at the hearing when Jennifer demanded proof and then panicked when I handed out copies of the county closure letter, the audit report, and the attorney's findings. Her face went pale. Her hands shook. She tried to argue, but the judge cut her off. The room was silent except for the sound of paper being shuffled. Then the gavel came down, and it was over. Karen was outvoted so hard the room laughed, and the management company disciplined the rep who enabled it by failing to verify her authority before processing the violations. I appreciate you being here,